Welcome to Accounting Life with Jotham Ty. Our guest today is Matt Dobson, SVP and Chief Accounting Officer at Zuora. In this episode, Matt and Jotham discuss how accounting professionals can upgrade their tech stacks. They explore key tools, best practices, and what to consider when choosing the right solutions for your business. Now, our host, Jotham Ty.
Hey, Matt, welcome to the Accounting Life podcast. How are you today?
Great. How are you doing? Appreciate you having me on.
I'm doing good, and I'm eager to get into our conversation, Matt. It's very rare that we get accounting leaders from actual accounting and finance solutions on our show. So I thought it'd be great to have you on. Our audience, a lot of the accounting leaders that are in our network, always looking to upgrade their tech stack. And, who better to have on the show than someone who was an accounting leader at one of the top accounting and finance solutions in the market. So I'm glad you're here, Matt. Now I've got a bunch of questions for you.
That's great. Happy to jump in.
Well, so I'll start with, I think this is a unique, again, experience and getting a behind the curtain peek at how accounting leaders at finance and accounting solutions like Zuora think about their finance system strategies. So, maybe if you wouldn't mind describing for the audience here, any kind of key principles that you take in determining strategies for your own organization. And maybe we can start there and then drill down in a bit.
I think for us, it's really, we take more of a hybrid approach to things. I think there's the best in breed where people look for the best solutions. And then there's kind of aligning to one stack, right? Like your SAP or something like that. And for us, obviously, we center kind of a lot of the things we do in finance on our own Zuora solutions. So CPQ all the way through collections, we have Zuora solutions that we use. But I think, if you look outside of that, we really look for strong products that can support different cycles, right? We're not as tied to saying it has to be one solution or it has to be one provider. I think all the solutions really do a good job of integrating today, and that's kind of a table stakes for success. So it's, we use different things in different areas, but we make sure it's something that is a strong solution that we can partner with. We can provide feedback. We can make sure it meets our needs. And then also we think about who the users are. Sometimes that's primarily finance users. If you look at a T&E solution, we really spend a lot of time looking at, all right, what do our travelers need, right? Whether they're our salespeople or our executives, what's going to make this easier for them? And we certainly want it to function on the back end too, but it's more of a blend of thinking about the end user there and also thinking about the finance team. But we do everything with the goal of automation in mind, right? Is this going to work for us? Is it going to help automate? And then also, is it a leader in the industry where we think it's going to develop to meet our next need, right? Because we can always assess, what the requirements are today. The team can come up with a great list, but we know the business changes pretty quickly. And that's something at Zuora we focus on. We started more with subscriptions. Now it's more usage-based pricing, things like that. And I think that's also what we look for in our solutions. Are they a leader that's going to keep developing and keep growing so that as our business grows and changes, they can meet those needs?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I definitely figured that some of your responses to these questions would align with what we're hearing on the ground with accounting leaders. I think there's a stronger emphasis these days, Matt, to try to work and partner with solutions that can automate multiple parts of a cycle, right? And this whole notion that a solution can just come in and replace a spreadsheet, and that's table stakes. But what that solution and partner can do to offer other automations beyond it. And that's what's great about Zuora. So, beyond billing, there's usage-based pricing, there's rev rec, there's payments, there's other ways that Zuora can support companies beyond just one point solution. And we're earlier stage at Gapify. Like right now, we're focused on accrual management. But for sure, without giving our roadmap away, there's a lot that we can do in the closed management realm that kind of fits that desire that accounting leaders have to work with a single provider to tackle as much of the gaps as possible. And it's interesting. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. When you first said best of breed, I think I'm kind of aging myself and going back to when best of breed versus single source first came up as a debate. Back then, it was more about the ERP as a single source, right? But what we really have now are other solutions that complement the ERP, just like Zuora. It is not a point solution because it is not just one use case; it's multiple now. So yeah, the framing has changed, and it's something I didn't realize that until you responded there.
Yeah, no, I think we need to come up with a term for that. But I agree with you. It's, Zora's quote to cash cycle, right? That's what we're focused on. We're not in the ERP space. We're not doing AP or procure to pay. Um, but we kind of want to own that space. And I think there's a lot of companies that are kind of in that same boat, right? They have a specific area of finance or accounting that they want to focus on, but they want to be the provider for the length of, that cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to get my team, or maybe, and we'll talk more about AI later. Maybe get AI to coin a new definition, like something in between, the ERP and a true single like point solution. There's definitely a class of players there that automates full cycles. And as much time as I spend with investors in the the VC community, I don't know if a term has been coined yet. Have you heard anything?
I love it. Maybe yeah, like I said, we can coin something here.
You and I, Matt, can coin something new, and and we should take credit for that. We'll have to, but I'm not creative enough. I'm an accountant, so I'm going to need some AI help to come up with a term there.
Yeah, me too. We're gonna have to bring in the specialists for sure.
Uh, but I know what we're good at as accountants, Matt, and it's kind of breaking down certain situations. I know part of deploying new technology in the accounting and finance tech stack is determining ownership, right? So I know there are different schools of thoughts and philosophies. I think I heard you or I've heard of you in certain posts having perspectives on a certain group than the other. But hoping you can elaborate for us, Matt, for our audience. Like, what do you think is the right way to think about, which teams? Is it finance that owns like something like Zuora, or is it IT, finance systems, or engineering?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's something we've thought about a lot from the Zora perspective for the quote to cash cycle. And, our perspective is it's really something that finance should own. And I think the way I view it is there's a lot of teams who have involvement, and you've got to have really close alignment to be successful. It starts with sales and sales ops because you're going to have opportunities. You're going to have a CRM system that's all going to feed into it. And you always have to have a partnership with IT, right? I mean, you're going to have to get things done. You're going to have to make changes to the system. But for me, up until recently, we were a public company, and the biggest line item on the financials was revenue. That was the thing I wanted to get right. And the only way to really truly automate that piece of it was having really great alignment upstream. So here at Zora, my team I have the deal desk, I have billing, I have revenue, I have cash collections. And we actually have them all under one leader as well. And what that's allowed us to do is really think about the process as a whole and determine, where we can do things maybe upstream to make it simpler, downstream, where the right place for the right work to happen is. And getting everyone kind of on the same team with the same goal has really helped us there. And I think that's, we view that as a best practice as well. I might be biased because I'm coming from the accounting and finance side. But I think you have to have great partnership across the board, right? It's not going to work if finance isn't partnered closely with sales. We're all trying to grow the business. We're all trying to get new deals done. So you have to have the team focused on that. You can't over-index towards the compliance, but I think by having that kind of all under one team, you can really kind of break down the work and put it in the right place for the most efficient process.
Yeah, and look, I think something that you touched there is there are points of contention and different philosophies out there, but two things can really be true in what you just shared there. One is IT and engineering or systems has to play a key role, right? And they're a key stakeholder in allowing finance teams to elevate their tech stack. Say they have the expertise, they know how to execute. But I think the second part that's true is I think finance can drive and articulate strategies better. And yeah, I'm also maybe biased, so I'll caveat with in two ways. One is, the finance and accountant in me, strongly believes that we should know how to drive the direction of our tech stack and tech roadmap. And if we can't, and I know over the years that's been in question, like, I can understand why we wouldn't be part of that, kind of thought leadership. I'm a big proponent because I think finance does need to understand how the processes are evolving, what kind of tools are needed to execute on management objectives. Now, putting on my CEO hat, I do like the idea of kind of decentralized ownership of systems because for the same reasons I just mentioned on the finance side. I think it takes a lot of expertise to understand like how to put together the right combination of solutions and strategies. Um, and I think, ownership of a system is a key part in activating those types of strategies. But again, like it's not to discount the partners that we need in IT and in other technical areas because without them, we can't make this go. So, yeah, there's definitely a world in which finance is leading strategy, but strong absolute support from IT. I don't know if that encapsulates the thoughts that you just shared in correctly or accurately, but
Definitely. I mean, I think you hit it, right? I mean, the partnership's key, but I think in the end, whoever's owning the outputs, it's important that they're invested in the system. They trust the system. It's something that if they selected it, even better, right? Because then they have more ownership of it. Um, I can't deploy it myself. Certainly we need IT. They play a really important role and we're going to take their opinions into account as well. But I think in the end, my team owns the numbers. We've got a report. And I think if they own the system as well, then it's all tied together.
well, and on that note, Matt, how much importance now do you have? How much importance do you place on understanding like how systems operate within the finance leaders that report to you? Like, is that level of expertise now strongly emphasized? Given how much it can unlock in terms of strategies.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think understanding the systems is key. I mean, when I started at Zuora, one of the first things I tried to do was understand exactly what systems we're using, what they do, what the processes are, and then what are the pain points, right? And is there a way to solve that? Because I think that's where you kind of look at new solutions, whether it's something from an existing vendor or something outside. Um, what's slowing down the close? What's the pain point every end of quarter? I mean, those are the things that that's kind of the low hanging fruit for automation. So I think, if you don't understand the systems and the processes, it's going to be hard to be successful. There's always a lot of pressure to get numbers out more quickly, more accurately. All of those things don't change. And I think the way to do that is to kind of get into it and really understand that part of it.
When I started my career, what you just described there wasn't necessarily a given. I know I had to jump through hoops back when I was trying to procure finance solutions back in the day, and just like having to over rationalize like why it's going to help provide complete and accurate financial statements. But now clearly the market is convinced that it can do that, and spreadsheets don't get you there. So yeah, your point there is definitely worth taking. And speaking of where we are now and where we're heading, of course, we can't have a discussion with anything these days accounting related without bringing up AI. So that's my fancy segue into my last set of questions here around that topic. Maybe just Matt, broadly speaking, right now, like what are your perspectives on AI specifically, and how do you think it's going to change the accounting tech stack and the tech landscape?
It's a really good question. And I think, you read lots of articles. I don't claim to be an expert by any means, but you hear about, are there going to be accountants in 10 years or 20 years? And I think the answer to that is probably yes. The team's doing a lot of amazing work. I think accounting has moved closer and closer to the business and business partnership. And that's always going to be an important part of things. And that's always probably going to be people. But I think AI is really interesting in a few areas in terms of looking at things and saying, all right, is there a way to do this more efficiently? I think, an easy answer for us was we do a lot of contract review at the end of the quarter. It takes a lot of time, slows down the close. And we were able to implement an AI solution that helped identify the contracts that had unusual terms in them or non-standard terms. And, AI can look at 100% of the contracts. Well, we couldn't do that. So it's more efficient, it's faster, and it takes something the team really didn't enjoy doing a whole lot and streamlines that process. So that was a really easy application for us. We're still looking at other ways to apply, but I mean, I think you can look at things, around pricing using AI to understand if I make this change, how's that going to model out? I think collections and cash forecasting is something that's really interesting to me. Having AI look at collection history and industry trends and things like that, just at a volume you couldn't have your team do. I have an amazing collections team. I always say that's an art because it, is a balance of keeping customers happy and collecting the cash. But they're focused on that piece of it, and they don't have as much time to spend on the forecasting and all of that. So I think that's a really interesting application of the AI. And I think, it's probably going to hit every solution. But I think it's just going to change the work a little bit and hopefully make it more efficient the same way as it's the same way we saw with automation and RPI and the other things that are kind of more accepted now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think as an accountant, I can see how it can make my former job more exciting. So if I were in accounting again, you mentioned the example of contract review. And that was painful. And I go back to the S&P 97-2 days in 0801, and not so much with 606 lately. That was past my time. But imagine not having to screen through every single revenue contract, looking for extended payment terms, most favored nation clauses, because you're letting AI do that. And maybe we can use that time as accountants instead to actually understand the substance of why contracts are being structured the way they are, and partner with sales to understand like what they're trying to achieve. And I know this now actually as a CEO. Back then I would just kind of go by the books and look for those key terms to see what kind of rev rec issues it triggers. But I understand now why my sales team may want, and they don't do this, by the way, for the record. They don't offer most favored nation clauses, but I can see the dynamic now because I'm able to interact with them. And of course, I can do that as a CEO now, and I should be doing that as a CEO. But I can imagine for accountants who may want like more context about why these transactions were happening to begin with, I would find that fun. And yeah, I'm on the same boat with you, Matt. I think this will just like unlock more joy, and it's never going to be fun in accounting. Our job's a little bit more fun in certain areas for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, I think anytime you can take away some of that manual work, right, it gives people time to do some of the things that they find more interesting, get involved more upstream. And that's really where they can make the impact too.
Absolutely. And I think it's going to take time for the industry to develop the conviction and get to like some level of critical mass. But we're actually starting to see that ourselves here at Gapify, where I'm sure as Zuora is very well connected to the industry and trying to get a sense of how ready the market is for AI. Yeah, I'm curious, Matt, and to the extent that you're comfortable sharing, like what are you hearing out there? Where is the industry at in terms of adoption and embracing AI?
It's always tough on the accounting side, right? Because we've got to get auditors comfortable with it too, even if we get comfortable with it. So, I think we're still in the early stages, but I think people realize that this is going to be part of accounting moving forward. We've been partnering with our auditors to make sure they understand anything we're doing and anything we're implementing and how it might impact controls. So I think, we might be slower than some other areas to adopt just because of compliance reasons. I think you have to get really comfortable with data privacy and other things, depending on what solutions you're using. But I think there's a lot of opportunity within finance and accounting. You see a lot of use cases that make sense. And I think it'll be slow steps in that direction. But I do think we're starting to see more adoption. We're seeing more things in, the solutions we use too, that are kind of embedded there that are easier to adopt. So, I know that's something Zuora is looking at moving forward, is how can we use AI to kind of make people's jobs easier and make the solution better. I think we'll do that carefully, being a system of record, but I think it's unavoidable at this point.
Yeah, agree. And the point about interacting and engaging your auditors, there's whether it's a process change or a new, tuck-in M&A entity, like whatever big changes are happening in finance and accounting, and AI is just another form of it, right? Just having that communication line open with the auditors is definitely critical. So yeah, I think that's a key point, regardless of where you are in your adoption cycle, having a conversation with with auditors is important. And you're also right, and it's the same with us at Capify. The transactions that we automate for our customers on the accrual side are audited, and also we work mostly with publicly traded companies, so we have to be thoughtful about how it's deployed. We can't just out of nowhere come up with a random black box AI feature and expect our customers to get confidence. So we're thinking about similar approaches. But again, not just to be agreeable with you, but 100%, 1,000% convinced that this is happening. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle. AI, I'm seeing different use cases and appreciating a lot of new use cases almost on a daily basis. And it's just a fun time to be in accounting, because I'm sure you've heard about the the noise out there about the profession and inability to recruit and get more accountants in the profession. So hopefully this is kind of that change catalyst that we need to drive the profession forward.
It's a really good point. I mean, I think, accounting doesn't always sound as exciting, but I do think you get to learn a ton about businesses. I spent time in public accounting on the audit side, learned a lot about my clients, learned about what I wanted to do moving forward. And I think, to the extent that you're getting rid of some of this manual work, I mean, I'm going to age myself here, but I mean, we still had paper work papers when I started. I mean, not many of them, but they still got carried around, and they're not doing that anymore. I think a lot of it's more systems driven. A lot of it is utilizing technology and understanding it. So I think we've got to change the perception a little bit too.
Yep, that's definitely a good point. And I started from the same era that you did. In fact, I was having a conversation with one of our partners about it a couple of days ago. We would put the term audit in front of every physical thing, like the audit binder, the audit cart, the audit box. It's great. Everything digital now, finally.
Yeah, no, I remember those days while lugging the files around, so that will not be missed, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, boxes and trunks. No one will understand now the joys of audit. Matt, this has been incredibly informative. I do have one last fun parting question. I just learned in this discussion that you obviously oversee a wide spectrum of functions within the order to cash cycle. Which particular functions have you learned a lot from? Like collections, I hear your scope even starts with CPQ, or maybe Zuora's scope starts with CPQ, but obviously a long list of functions that lead up to the ultimate cash in the books. Like which parts have you learned a lot from?
I've learned a lot from a lot of the functions. It's hard to call one out. My career, I started in public accounting, and then I spent time running revenue in North America when I was at SAP. And so I'm comfortable on the revenue side, work closely with the deal desk, work closely with sales. That's probably where I'm most comfortable. But just getting back into all of the financial reporting, the SEC requirements, that's been great and an interesting learning experience. But I think each group, if you spend the time to dig in, can really teach you something. I lead the procurement team. So, I hadn't done procurement in my career. I hadn't focused on that. I hadn't looked at negotiating terms from that side, right? I was familiar with, being on the sales side and trying to get a customer to sign on. And then, it taught me some good strategies for when I took on procurement. But, it's just a different perspective. And each one of them, you have to handle a little bit differently. I think I have a really amazing team. And when I joined at Zuora, I spent some time with each function to try to get a better understanding. But I don't know if I can single one out, but wherever you spend time, I'm always learning something.
Well, and it's no secret that I'm an advocate of the profession, so it doesn't surprise to hear that answer. You're taking on procurement, which is very different from the other cycles that you mentioned, and your point about like knowing how both sides now, the dynamics on both sides, I'm sure is pretty fun to learn. But yeah, I think that's why I've been a huge advocate of the accounting profession. It sounds like there's just so many different ways to learn about how businesses operate within the many different functions that accountants oversee. So yeah, the points that you shared there definitely resonate. Well, Matt, we appreciate you joining the Accounting Live podcast. I had, as you can tell, a lot of fun as always having these conversations, and hopefully we get you back soon for some more juicy accounting topics.
No, I really enjoyed being on. Thanks so much for having me. It was great.
So, well, thank you, Matt.
Thanks for stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want more information, please check us out at gapify.com, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.